What's up, guys? We are back. New York Muscle Radio, the #1 muscle building podcast on the planet. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, alongside my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian. And today we're going to be talking about how the fitness industry is lying to you. They're telling you blatant lies. And we're going to debunk a lot of the lies that are out there today and talk about really what is optimal. But Big Pete, what's going on, man?
Man, I'm starting to feel like these podcasts, we should do some type of we should call it fitness and coffee, or like fitness and lunch or something like that. It's a Friday routine for us now, and every time I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is the type of conversation we would have if we were sitting down having a cup of coffee, or if we were like sharing a high protein meal or something like that, you know?
Hey, if you want to start cooking for us on Fridays, I'm down.
Yeah.
It's about my lunchtime now.
I know, I'm actually hungry right now, which is why I'm thinking of food, but yeah, I mean, everything's going good, man. I'm enjoying training. I'm experimenting with some new stuff that I'm doing myself with training and stuff like that too, which kind of gave me the idea for the topic today that we're going to talk about, because a lot of stuff I'm doing with myself right now doesn't necessarily fall in line with what the fitness industry says is optimal. So I think it's a cool topic to talk about.
But what are you doing right now that's so different?
It's not that it's so different, but I hate to use the word instinctive training, because there's no such thing as instinctive training when it comes to working out, because Mike Menser said a great quote one time when he talked about if humans were to train instinctively, they wouldn't lift the weights, they would, to quote him, urinate on them and defecate on them. It's a very stupid quote, but it's kind of true when you think about it. Like, instinctively, you don't look at a weight and say, I'm going to lift that and build muscle with it, you know? So when it comes to working out, if we're talking about instinctive training, the idea behind instinctive training is more of just doing what you feel your body responds to the best. Resting when you need to rest, training when you need to rest, and training how you feel your body's going to respond to the best. So I've kind of pulled myself away from worrying so much about being optimal with my training, which for so many years I got caught up in that. I'm sure, at some point you have to. I think everybody does. But then you get to the point where you kind of realize, okay, I've applied all these optimal strategies. I learned some things from them, but I also learned some things that don't work for me in my specific situation. And I think as you become better at training and better at becoming a better bodybuilder, better at anything in fitness, you start to understand what applies to you and what doesn't. And that's really what I'm trying to focus on at this point, because I'd say every year, progressively, I start to pull things out of my training. Like, oh, I don't need this. This is not useful for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it was funny because I was going to say this before, but I was like, I'll wait for the podcast. But my neck is so sore right now. So I started doing, so you had shown me this when you so the best way to do a shrug is with dumbbells, right? But the problem with dumbbells is they're a pain in the butt to get into position. The dumbbells are rubbing against your thighs. It's like really annoying. So I think the best thing is probably like a Smith machine shrug, because it's kind of easy to do, but I don't have a Smith machine, right? So I took the hack that you did and I made it better. So what Pete actually showed me one day was taking D handles, throwing them on the barbell, and then using them like dumbbells. And I was like, wow, this is really good. But I upped it today, man. So I started doing it reverse. So I have the barbell behind me, because I love those in the Smith machine. Those are really good in the Smith machine, but again, I don't have a Smith machine.
Right.
But it mimics it perfectly when I put those handles on and I face the other way. But oh man, it hits my neck so hard. One of the things I hate so much about training traps hard and heavy is that I get so sore and I get such a headache.
Yeah,
I hate that so much. I have that with
certain exercises, yeah.
So much, like I get such a headache because I get so sore, like especially up in here. That's why sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do shrugs today.
Yeah.
I don't feel like having a headache all day.
Yeah. Well, that also, goes right back to what I'm talking about with kind of adjusting things based on your own needs. And it's crazy, because sometimes if I were to look at myself training as a fly on the wall, I'd look at, and I didn't know anything about training other than what people said was like textbook form, or like these are the exercises to build these muscle. I'd look at it and be like, what the hell is this guy doing? Because sometimes, like I trained back yesterday at the gym, a couple days ago. And I remember, they're just thinking about all the exercises I'm doing, like, not one of these exercises would be considered like a textbook movement. Like, somebody not knowing much about bodybuilding or like how to tweak things for their body would look at me and say, every exercise he's doing is wrong. His form is wrong, the technique is wrong, the exercise itself, I don't even know what it's called, The
trainers come up to you at the gym like, hey man, you should do this the right way.
The gym I've been going to, there's no trainers, but if there were, I'm sure they come like, what, maybe you should, sit up a little more upright and pull right down to here, like one of those things. And like I do stuff now where like I take machines and use them for things they're not even intended for. You know, I'm one of those guys these days.
So you're that guy that's like flying on the Smith machine. You ever see those videos where they're like they're
No,
flying around?
I don't take it that far. But like I like doing things where like so a great example is like I did a YouTube video on this. I really like pullovers. It's like one of my favorite exercises for the lats. But it's one exercise where, depending on how you do it, it can be a great movement or it could be terrible. And most people you talk to don't really do pullovers anymore. A lot of them say, oh, it's like a useless exercise, you know. If you have a really good Nautilus machine, like the old school ones, the change-driven ones, like they're built so perfectly, you can't really mess up that exercise. But if you're doing it with dumbbells or if you're doing them on a cable, it's very easy to do things like, I see people all the time doing cable pullovers and like they're pressing the weight down with their triceps, they're leaning forward, they're moving their whole body, you know. They're not just focusing on stretching and contracting, which is the main thing you want to do with a pullover. I've modified that too, where if you don't have access to a pullover machine, there's ways to do it with cables where it'll actually mimic the same thing that like a Nautilus pullover machine will how it'll feel. So I like doing that in the gym sometimes too. Like I even do it. I have a variation I do on like a seated cable row, which is really cool too. So all these exercises, you know, like I go to the end of the seated cable row and I'm not sitting on the bench, I'm standing behind it, I'm leaning over it.
Yeah, I've done those. Those are good,
know,
actually. Those are really good.
Those are movements where you're like, wow, if they just built the machine and said this is the way to do it, everyone would say
Well,
it's a
dude,
good
I'll tell you right now, the
exercise.
people who make machines nowadays don't work out.
I know.
I bought so much equipment for the gym, I'm like, who made this?
Right.
Because it's like, it's just not made for a bodybuilder at all. It doesn't hit the muscle. And like you said, sometimes you have to do the total opposite in order to kind of, you know, get more out of the movement.
Yeah.
But this is actually a really cool way to kind of segment into what I wanted to talk about today. So, C-Bum, Chris Bumstead, did you see the new video that he put out?
I didn't see it. I saw he posted it, but
you know what I'm talking about?
Was it his leg training one or something?
No, his cycle.
Oh, okay, I saw that too.
So he had one talking about his cycle, and he got like flamed for it because everybody says he's lying in the video. Did you watch it?
No, I have no idea.
So those of you who know what I'm talking about Chris Bumstead. The guy he's classic bodybuilder, but he is probably the best. He is the best in the world. I mean, he looks great. I think
physique,
he has a really, really good physique. I think he trains really well. He's got a lot of issues with his health. Like he's got a lot of digestive issues. I think he paid for like I think it was like a $2,500 like blood test to find out like what foods he should and shouldn't eat. Like tuna was on there. It was a really interesting video, and I think those tests are so cool. But they're so expensive. Like, why is it? I mean, I understand why a test is that much, but like, I feel like those are things that like people should be checked regularly so they know.
Of course.
Anyway, neither here nor there. Yeah. So he got flamed in the video for talking about how right after a contest he comes off all his juice. He completely stops. He goes off cycle, and then he gets like on a TRT dose. And I think he says he's around like 500 milligrams a week now. And everybody was like, he's lying. There's no way to be able to maintain a physique like that doing that. But, you know, this fits right into the topic that we're talking about. Sometimes, and this is the best in the world. This guy's the best in the world. You have to do what works for you and what you feel is the best.
Right.
So I was just curious what your thoughts were if you saw that, what you thought.
I didn't see it, but I've heard that about Chris Bumstead before. I think he's been pretty open with like what he uses and all his gear usage and all that stuff. And I've heard them talk about how even in the off season, at some points they claim that's all he uses. They say he uses 500 milligrams a test, and some people say no way, you know. But a lot of this stuff too, you know, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I have enough knowledge on it, and I've worked with enough people to see what different dosages do and things that happen when you come off, when you stay on, when you adjust things for certain periods of time. And what a lot of people don't realize is your body doesn't just go from 100% to zero when you make a small change or big change. It doesn't happen right away. It's like the same thing with weight training itself. You know, if you have a little injury that prevents you from going to the gym for a month, is your body going to fall apart? You know, you're going to look completely different a month later, you know, provided you're still, you know, on top of your diet, you know, you're resting, you're recovering. You're not going to fall apart. Like, yeah, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle, you know, your performance is going to change. When you come back in the gym in a couple of weeks, your body's just going to, you know, go right back to where it was. So a lot of these things that people say they do, you know, if he says he comes off completely, he just stays on test. 500 milligrams, by the way, is not a TRT dose at all, you know, for almost nobody. You know, that's going to maintain a ton of muscle. Like, yeah, nobody stays on.
I think he said, I don't know if I'm saying, if I remember 100%, but I think it was anywhere between like, maybe it was 200 to 500. I don't remember what the exact number was off my head.
I've heard him say the 500, but regardless if it's 200 or 500, you know, that's still putting people way in the super physiological level. It's not a natural level of testosterone to have. to maintain his physique, he's not going to be going down to true TRT doses. So I don't see any reason he would make that up. Like, why would it make a difference what the dosage, especially after a contest when he's not trying to look his best? Why would he lie about that? But it's different from person to person. Like you mentioned, it really depends on how your body responds. So what he does isn't representative of what the next person is going to do to get the same results. Because you could take the exact cycle he takes, you could take the exact methods, the training, diet, nutrition. You're not going to reproduce the same exact results because he has his individual genetics, he has his individual lifestyle, and everything he does is all tied in together. If he didn't have the same diet, he might have to adjust the supplements. If he didn't train the same way, he'd have to adjust the supplements. He might have to change his diet to match the training, vice versa. There's all these variables and they all work together. And that's the one thing that people need to figure out for themselves is you can't just look at one thing Chris Bumstead does, follow it and get the same results. You have to look at the whole combination and you have to be Chris Bumstead.
Right. Well, it just goes, he does something that's very similar to somebody else who's really successful in bodybuilding who did the same kind of thing, Ronnie Coleman. Mm-hmm. Ronnie Coleman, I believe so anyway, I don't know if I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure I heard this somewhere along the line that after contests he would stop. He would stop working out for a month, like he would take a lot of time off post. And Chris Bumstead does the same thing. And I think we talked about this in 2 episodes ago, I think, when, talking about how there's times you got to slam on the gas and times you have to take your foot off the gas. Yeah. And I think we talked about that on that episode where you should have at least a month of the whole year where you're just going light and kind of coasting. Yeah. So I think it's something to say about doing that. If these are the best guys in the world, granted they have the best genetics, but they're the best guys in the world, taking time off like that, I think it's definitely a must for some. And I don't think you have to take off. Maybe you don't have to not go to the gym, but like doing a really like heavy deload where you kind of like really pull that volume back. And I like to do that probably around like the holidays, like Christmas time-ish is probably the best time to do it because festive, and plus I don't want to be working out like crazy on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and worrying about all that. So that's like December is like kind of like my low month.
And it's beneficial. You can't look at it like, oh, I'm taking time off because it's the holidays and I want to have time for myself. You're actually doing yourself, a service by taking that time off. You're allowing your body to heal up. You're allowing your mind to get motivated to get back in the gym. Yeah, you have to. And it's a beneficial. It's just as important as training. It's part of the plan. Rest days, rest weeks, things like that, that's just as important as the training days. It's part of the plan,
Yeah, exactly. So I just was curious what your thoughts were on that. And I agree with what you're saying too. It's like, people care so much. I mean, I watch the comments on your videos too, and it makes me laugh hysterical. Yeah. People go back and forth. Well, you just already said that you're not natty. He's natty. He's not natty. You just come out like, dude, what does it matter? I don't understand people's logic. Like, does it really matter what Chris Bumstead does? Like, who cares? First of all, you're not going to be able to emulate it. No. I know guys in the gym that are on double the stuff that he's probably taking when he's on, like, contest time and don't look half his way, so what does it matter? Right. I don't understand people's, like, obsession with that.
The only thing I can understand at this point and why people love to obsess over that is they need a reason to say, okay, this guy has a better physique than me or whatever. His results are better because of this. They need to find that because. Why is this guy getting results and I'm not? And immediately that's the thing they go towards. And I've said this to you so many times too. There's so many guys that are on way more than you think they're on and they look natural. But you'll never sit there and say, oh, that guy's taking stuff. But the guys that look good, whether they're natural or not, it's always because he's taking steroids or whatever it is, So it's not as cut and dry as, oh, he looks great because he takes juice. You hear that stuff coming up when you first start working out, and you're like, oh, I don't know, the big guy in the gym, he's probably on something. The guy who's not big is not on something. But a lot of times it could even be the result. And it's crazy. You start to see, it's like it's mind-blowing sometimes where you're like, that guy over there is the one that's not natural and the other guy is, and I've seen it so many times. It's crazy.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of natural or not, I watched a video the other day on Alex Hormozi. Now, I love that guy. I think he is a beast. I follow him more for business, but he is a beast, but like in fitness, outside of fitness, like everything that guy touches, he's just a genius. So I watched a video with him and More Plates, More Dates, Derek, and they went on there and they were talking about his transformation. So he swore he was natty, how he gained 35 pounds in 6 weeks. So I wanted to talk about like the procedure like he used to get there. So basically in the interview, let me backtrack the whole story here. So in the interview with Derek, he talks about his transformation. So he says that he was running his gyms when he did that transformation. He wanted to get in the best shape as possible in 6 weeks. So he was roommates with Greg Nuckols. Greg Nuckols gave him like this specific routine and protocol that I want to talk about. And then he blew up. He gained 35 pounds in 6 weeks. But he was coming off a layoff, so he gained back a lot of muscle that he lost and blah, blah, blah. Then after that is when he like started using TRT and started like getting on, and he got to his biggest after that. But so many people talk about that specific transformation as the one that, that's not possible natural. So I wanted to talk about two things. I wanted to talk about the protocol, but before we talk about the protocol, I want to talk about why I believe truly that transformation was natural, and how when you do come off a layoff, how it is possible to put on that much more size. So I think we should start down that, and then we'll talk about the protocol, because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact specifics of it. The only thing I know is I do know originally when he did put that out there, that transformation, like you said, when he gained that 35 pounds. I do know that he claimed that he did it, like, what'd you say, it was how long was it?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. It was like a crazy transformation for anybody, and I could just tell you, I don't know if he did it natural or not. I'm not even going to speculate if he did it natural or not.
So I'm going to assume he did, right? Because his story lines up from what he said, like, in that article, like, years ago. I think that article was, like, 6, 7 years old, something like that now. And to what he's been saying in all of his videos, it lines up. So, again, we're just assuming what he says is true. So he did that naturally. But it definitely is possible to re-put back muscle. It's not like he didn't gain a whole bunch of brand new tissue. It wasn't 35 pounds of pure tissue.
Right. And that's the point I was going to make. Whether he did it naturally or not, even if you take whatever you think he took to get that muscle during that transformation, you don't really gain 35 pounds of tissue in 6 weeks, no matter what you're taking. You know, I know people love to think that that's the case. 35 pounds?
35, yeah.
35 pounds of actual muscle tissue is a crazy amount of muscle.
It definitely wasn't. When you look at his picture, he definitely gained a lot of body fat with it too.
Of course.
But, you know,
when he did it naturally or not, though, So when people are saying, 35 pounds, it had to be because he was taking something. But regardless, 35 pounds itself, that's a crazy amount of weight to gain in any period of time, and in 6 weeks especially, that would be like, if you were talking about Chris Bumstead. Do you think Chris Bumstead could take any drug under the sun to get him to gain another 35 pounds of muscle tissue in 6 weeks? No.
But I think if Chris Bumstead comes off everything and then goes back on, so if he went from 0 to 100, he put on 35. He could do that.
Right.
And that's exactly my point. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And people were flaming him for that. So go ahead.
Yeah, same thing. You can do the same thing. I can do the same thing. You could stop going to the gym for 6 months. I don't know how much weight you'd lose, but let's just say you lost a significant amount of muscle. Let's say it's 10, 20 pounds. If you just didn't go to the gym for a whole year, let's just say, you can definitely go right back to your training and, your discipline. I know you can get right back in your training and nutrition. In 6 weeks, you could probably get back to where you are now. And it'll look like, he gained 20, 25 pounds of muscle tissue. And it's true you did, but you're regaining that muscle that you already had. So that's totally realistic, with or without drugs.
Yeah. So the protocol now, this is where I really wanted to get into today, but that just happened to pop in my mind. But the protocol that he claimed to use, Greg Nuckols gave it to him, and basically what they said was, Greg Nuckols said, okay, you're going to work out, instead of working out for an hour, you're going to work out 10 minutes 6 times a day. So again, this guy owns a facility, so he's able to do that during that time. So he basically did he split up his workout 6 times, and he posted the workout on, if you Google Alex Hormozi 35 pounds, the article will pop up and it'll show you. Basically, it's a full body workout pretty much every day. But the interesting thing was, and I had sent you the article last night, and that's why I sent it to you actually. So he referenced a study that talked about their nutrition protocol and said that basically fat converts to fat very easily, which is true. We all know that, right? The more fat you consume, the more your body's going to kind of hold on to. And the same thing, people talk about, when I go on keto, I'm burning more fat. It's just the fat that you're eating that you're burning. Right. So basically what this study shows is that basically keeping your fat intake almost at 0, the conversion from carbs into fat is not that high. So his protein intake was 300 grams a day, and his carb intake was 800, and his fat intake was 50. And he swore that that's what helped him put on a lot of muscle. So I was curious what you thought about that and the approach on that, and I kind of want to break that down. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've always been one to promote that if your goal is bodybuilding, and again, it's so easy for people in the fitness industry to get confused with fitness, health, and then bodybuilding. Technically, your approach to nutrition is going to be different depending on which one of those is your goal. But when we're talking specifically on, I want to build as much muscle and burn as much body fat, I want to look like a bodybuilder, or you are a competitive bodybuilder, you're always going to be an advantage if you prioritize like a carbohydrate-based diet versus a non-carbohydrate-based diet. You know, like you said, people on keto, even some bodybuilders, they swear by it because, again, they say things like, oh, I'm burning more fat. But carbohydrates are more protein sparing than protein itself. So the second you start removing carbohydrates from the diet, your body's always looking for a way to, you know, get energy. And a lot of times what it does is it's going to convert some of your protein into carbohydrates anyway. Or if your calories are so low, your body's going to end up starting to use that protein for energy. So just having carbohydrates in your diet when you're dieting is always going to spare more protein. It's going to spare more muscle. When you're looking to gain more muscle, carbohydrates are one of the things that boost your metabolism more than any other macronutrient. So if you're raising your calories, you want your metabolic rate to raise as well. You don't want to be storing body fat. If you start slamming your metabolism with tons and tons of fat and you're eating excess calories and it's not doing something to stimulate your metabolism, you're likely to gain more body fat. So just keeping those carbs in there, you know, again, we've talked about it before, when your calories get so high, at a certain point, you're probably going to have to just raise every macronutrient. And then you can't even say, oh, I have a super high carb diet and a low fat diet. You know, if you go on extremes, you might be able to control it, but at a certain point, if you're just not gaining weight, you're going to have to. But I still think you should lead with the carbs when you're trying to gain, you know? Once your protein requirements are met, once your baseline fat is met, where you're producing enough hormones, you know, it's not causing extreme hunger, things like that, I don't see any benefit of raising fat beyond that point. You know, again, if you need to fill calories and you just can't get them from any more carbs, raise the fat, but you're getting much more benefit bringing those carbs up first.
It's funny because in the diet that he had, and he's pretty he's talked about like what he eats every day, and it's really, really simple. So basically he had like a box of cereal in the morning with like a protein shake or milk or whatever it was. Yeah. And then like for lunch or dinner, I forget which one it was, I don't have it in front of me. But he would go to Chipotle, triple pinto beans, triple black beans. I'm like, oh my God, that would destroy my stomach.
I did a bulk like that once. I was eating probably about...
Dude, triple beans, that's 6 servings of beans.
It was triple meat. I would get triple meat and triple rice, but I would not get triple beans. But
No, he didn't get triple beans. He got triple beans twice.
Yeah, no.
So that's 6 times the beans.
Yeah. No, I didn't do that with the beans. It was always the meat and the rice.
Well, it makes sense. If he's trying to get in all these carbs without the fat, what other options do you have?
There's not many options.
Well, you have no other options. Honey is actually a really good carbohydrate to take when you're trying to put on weight like that. I've recently discovered honey. Again, like I've used it so many times in the past, and I always hated it, but I actually discovered honey. So for those of you who suffer from allergies, I suffer from allergies, and if you get locally grown honey, like it has to be local though, because the bees pollinate locally, and you have it every day, a little bit every day, you're kind of subcepting, I can't say the word today, man. You're giving yourself a little bit of that dose of pollen every day. And it actually has made a huge difference in my allergies. So I've been having honey every day, and I've been dieting, so I scale the honey down and then I scale it back up. But it's a really good food. I feel really good when I have honey. I don't feel like bloated. And you can get a decent amount of carbs from honey. 1 tablespoon is like 17 grams of carbs. It's a decent amount. And 1 tablespoon is nothing.
That's the key. I get asked all the time by people, you know, I'm trying to bulk. How do I increase my appetite? You know, and I always tell them, you're asking the wrong question. Don't ask how do you increase your appetite. How do you get more calories in for the amount of food, for the volume of food you want to eat? So you want to eat, you know, high calorie foods that are low volume. So instead of trying to cram more food down that's very filling, you want to get those foods that are very calorie dense.
And again, this is why I love what we do when it comes to, especially with nutrition and flexible dieting. We still haven't given it a name, by the way. We have to coin something.
Yeah, I removed myself from flexible
I know,
dieting.
but I don't know how else to describe it. Counting macros sounds horrible, so I don't want to say that. But you know, this is why, again, doing what we do with the nutrition approach that we take is just so optimal, because again, it's all about the numbers. And the numbers and the data does not lie. Like, that's the beautiful part about everything. The numbers don't lie. Your feelings don't matter. You know, it doesn't matter if the numbers say one thing, that's it. So if you're having, 400 grams of carbs a day, 70 fat a day and 200 grams of protein, and your weight on the scale is not increasing or decreasing, you need to pull those numbers down. Exactly. It's just easy. But I want to transition from here into talking about like having a workout journal. So one of the things, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I believe there's a difference between working out and training.
100%, yeah.
Now, what most people do is they go to the gym or they go and work out, and that's good. They're doing a workout. That's very good, and you should be doing that for your health. But you're not actually training. by keeping a workout journal, you're actually physically training. Because now you're able to look at the data and say, okay, last time I worked out, I did this. So now I need to do this time. So like all these years that you've been training, Pete, do you keep a workout journal?
Yeah, I've always had at least a loose format of a training journal. Sometimes it's a bit more structured, but I don't think I've randomly went in the gym and just lifted weights or trained or whatever you want to say I did when I went in. I never had a training session probably since probably since day one, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe just the first couple of months when I got into lifting, but from there, I never went in without a goal to beat my previous best or to progress somehow.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And again, that's the difference between working out and actually training.
Right.
You know, you need to be able to keep track of what you're doing. You need to be able to know, okay, last time I went to the gym, I did lateral raises, I did this for this many reps. You need to be able to know that, because that is actually training. And that's going to be the difference between getting really good results and not getting good results. So I went through a little period where I was training with somebody. This was very early on in my career. I was probably like 17 years old at this time. So I was training with somebody, and he was like a really good natural bodybuilder. So I thought, all right, hold on. So I'm training with him, and he's a really like established natural bodybuilder. So for me, I was like, okay, I'll just follow what he does. So I didn't keep a workout journal or anything. I was basically following his routine. Right. And my results were really poor and really subpar.
Yeah.
And it's because I wasn't following my training protocol. I wasn't following what works for me. I was working out. I wasn't training.
Right. And I think the important thing too is a lot of people who do promote using a log and promote some type of training journal, they promote it for the wrong reason, and they promote it as a way to plan your training. They always say you have to be better than you were previously, and that is one of the most important things of it. But I think they also miss the big picture when the training, the training log is also there to tell you what your body is responding to and what it's not responding to. Because it's very easy to get in your own head and just say, yeah, I had a great workout. But then if you look at the logbook and you say, you know what, I actually was lifting more weight 2 months ago, or I was doing more 2 months ago, or whatever it is, or my progress is actually going down, but mentally you're just like, yeah, I sweated, I got a great pump, I felt great. But if you look at the logbook doesn't lie.
Well, this is what I said, if your feelings, you have to take them out of the equation, because you can have a really good workout.
Yeah.
Like, and I talk about this all the time, especially in the ads that we run too. It's like, I can put anybody through a really, really good workout.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And you could be on the floor, you could be dead, but that doesn't mean it was productive.
No.
In order to have productive workouts, you need to be training. And in order to be training, you need to be keeping track of the data. So this is why it's so important, and it's just a good reminder for everybody listening to this, that you need to log everything in a logbook or training book. And again, it doesn't have to be an elaborate system.
No, it doesn't.
For our clients, we have our own app that they log everything into. I use paper and pen.
Yeah.
I have like a little black and white book, and I have stacks of those books in my house for years of my training.
Yeah.
But that's what it takes to actually begin training and stringing together productive workout after productive workout after productive workout.
Yeah, and like I said too, it's just a great indicator of, okay, it's telling you, am I on the right path to get to my goal? You have an end goal, but you need to know if you're moving in the right direction. Just because you're going to the gym, just because you're training, doesn't mean you're moving in the right direction. You might be spinning your wheels, and the logbook will tell you that.
Yeah, and you said it the best. It's like, I sweated today.
Right.
What does that mean? You can go outside and sweat. It's summertime right now. You can go outside and sweat.
It's just like bodybuilders are guilty of it too. A lot of them go to the gym and it's just like, tonight was great. I got a massive pump. Like the pump was insane tonight. Yeah, but did you actually stimulate your muscles, and did you actually cause an overload effect that your body wasn't subjected to previously? Might not have been. I mean, same thing with sweating. I can make you sweat. I can also make you get a great pump. Doesn't mean you're actually going to progress.
All right, so let's talk about it, man. It's a perfect transition to go right into it. So, the fitness industry is lying to you. They tell you optimal, optimal, optimal. You got to do what's optimal. So, when it comes to training, what does that mean? What does that mean? What is optimal?
That's the question.
Because everybody swears optimal is this, optimal is that, but what is optimal?
Yeah, I've noticed, the fitness community's always been guilty of this, but I'd say in the last few years it's gotten out of control. But everyone's looking for the right answer, And it causes people to argue on the internet too. It's like anything else. It's like politics. It's like, it's crazy because, even just not to bring politics into it, but because everything that's going on right now, everyone's sitting there complaining on social media every time someone does something. Look, this guy's the reason, for everything. This person's helping or whatever, and it's just arguing back and forth. But it's like they're always looking, okay, this is the way to do it. But it's not, in fitness especially, it's not the way to do it. There's more than one way to do it, and it depends on you and your own unique situations. And what somebody says this is the way to do it might be for somebody in a specific situation, but if you're not in that same situation, it might not be for you.
Well, it's just like everything else, man. It's like everybody kind of wants to belong to the club.
Yeah.
Like the people with the keto, they're part of the keto club.
Right.
And they'll swear up and down that keto works for them. Same thing with the carnivore people.
And then somebody else has to tell them that's not the way to do it.
Right. And everybody just argues back and forth.
Right.
And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
But, so what does optimal even mean then?
There really isn't optimal, and that's the point I want to make with this too, is because people will say, okay, to answer the question, what does optimal actually mean? People ask, like, if we're talking about muscle building, let's say, they'll say, I want to know the optimal way to build muscle because I want to do everything 100%. I want to get the best results. Usually when people are seeking optimal, they're doing so because they want the best results they can get. There's some people that get into fitness where they're like, I just want to, build a little bit of muscle and burn body fat. I'm not, trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then you get the other guys where it's like, I will do whatever it takes. I want to get the exact results Arnold got. So tell me what the optimal training plan is, the optimal diet plan is, and they look for this specific answer. And then there's all different people that are trying to come up with the optimal plan. A lot of people in the science-based community are guilty of this themselves. They're always searching for what is optimal to build muscle. And they'll do study after study, they'll look at examples and they'll say, based on everything we know, in an ideal situation, this is the most optimal way to train. But many people take that and they forget the main thing that's going to get you the best results is doing what works best for you. And I don't mean the methods themselves, but applying what's optimal to your lifestyle. So like we were talking about earlier, a lot of stuff has come out in the science-based community talking about like 6 days a week is better than 5, or 6 days a week is better than 3, let's just say. Or they even had this study where I think they said like 30 sets per muscle group is better than 15, or whatever it is. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The numbers don't matter. But people take that and they just say, okay, I want to build muscle, so I will get the best results if I do 30 sets, But number one, how are you performing those 30 sets? Somebody asked me the other day, is 8 to 10 sets a week good enough to build muscle, or will I get better results doing 10 to 12? Like, first of all, the difference is not so significant where it's going to make or break your training. Yeah. The second thing is, what do your 8 to 10 sets look like versus if you were to do 10 to 12? If you're just cramming in a couple extra sets of shitty sets that don't do anything, it's not going to be better. If your quality is just as good, yeah, you might get a better, a benefit from doing a little bit more. At the same point, if you're going all out on those 8 to 10 sets where you're crippling yourself, you might not even be able to productively do a few more sets, especially in the same session. So the numbers and optimality and all this stuff doesn't always mean anything when you put it into practical application. So you have to look at all the different details. And, the information we have on what's optimal is good, but you need to know how to apply it. That's the most important part. And you also need to know how to look at it and say, okay, this is not practical for me,
And I think you also have to be willing to experiment. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. I feel like I say that every podcast because we have talked about it so many times. We have so many episodes.
Yeah.
And we've talked about a lot of these things over and over. But like one of the things is you have to be able to experiment and figure out, okay, and try things. Like right now, I'm actually doing full body routines. Like I just meshed my stuff together.
Right.
And it seems to be working really well. Like I'm getting as lean as possible. I'm dieting right now, so I'm getting lean faster. My diet's the same as it always is to get lean. So that's the one variable that changed, and I'm definitely retaining more muscle this way. So right now it seems to be working, but I have to be willing to experiment with that in order to see if it's actually working. And the reason why I even switched to that was because I wanted to figure out a way to get like my volume in and cut back on the time that I'm actually spending working out, and possibly in the future adding more volume, and that's a perfect way to do it for me. So again, it's just you have to be willing to experiment and constantly be willing to change, because what's optimal for you now in 6 months might not be optimal for you.
Right.
But you have to be willing to go through a period of time where you're like, okay, this works and this doesn't work.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and it's all about experimenting and then applying those things. And a great example I always talk about is a lot of people will say, like, this is the optimal way to train. If you're not training this way, or you're not dieting this way, you're not going to get the best results. But if you look at anybody at the top of their field, if they're the best in their sport, if they're the best in bodybuilding, fitness, whatever, we'll go with that example, but it applies to any area. they're doing the things that are optimal for them and not what's quote unquote optimal for everybody. So a lot of people will say, oh, don't copy a pro bodybuilder's routine because he's a pro bodybuilder and he could get great results doing anything. But if the guy is the best in the sport and he's trying to be better than everybody, don't you think that he's still going to do what's optimal for him and he's not going to just do anything? You know, he's not going to just go in the gym and say, listen, I can grow on anything, so I'm going to go in without a plan. He's going to say, no, I can grow on anything, but I grow the best doing it this way.
Right.
Regardless if that's what's optimal on paper or not. In a lot of cases, the stuff these guys are doing are not what falls in line with what's quote unquote optimal when you talk about like scientific, looking at it scientifically. You know, a lot of pro bodybuilders, like we were talking about Chris Bumstead, you know, his training method is probably far from what's considered optimal on paper. But given his unique situation, how his body responds and everything that he's doing, at his level, you know, his strength, you know, his performance, the amount of muscle he's carrying, he's no longer the ideal candidate for optimal training. His training has to be completely customized to where he's at physically.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you know, that's the thing is that people forget that. You know, it's like you have to be able to, like we said, just you have to experiment with it. But the first thing that kind of comes to my mind, and I want to switch a little bit to nutrition, but the first thing that comes to my mind is like, I'm not a CrossFit guy at all.
Yeah.
But the first thing that comes to my mind is Rich Froning.
Yeah.
The guy I don't know if still is, I don't follow CrossFit, so I really don't know, but the guy was the best in CrossFit, like the number one, whatever, the CrossFit or fittest man in the world. I don't know what they call themselves, fittest man in the world, I guess.
I think so.
Whatever, but the way he got there was not training CrossFit. Like he's on so many interviews, and if you watch any of his videos, he didn't get there training like CrossFit. He trained the way that worked for him.
Right.
And even like diet wise, all CrossFitters typically do paleo, which is a ridiculous diet, but neither here nor there. But not him. He was literally having a bowl of peanut butter and jelly. Like he would just mix peanut butter and jelly in a bowl and eat it like that. Like, I can't do that.
Right.
But that's what works for him. But that's like, this whole topic, that was the first person that came to my mind, was because he does things so much outside of the box of CrossFit that the CrossFit community does not even understand it.
Right.
And it goes back to those community things that we were just talking about. But they don't understand it, but it's because he's training optimally for him.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like when we talk about certain things being applicable to certain goals, like if you're talking about bodybuilding, you're talking about fitness, or if you're talking about health, a lot of things that, like I said, there's a different method and approach to it, but a lot of things can be said about learning that approach for yourself and then applying it to the other area. Like if we were to ever just say, listen, I'm like, at some point I'm going to not give up on bodybuilding, but I'm going to say, okay, my focus now is not getting as big as humanly possible.
Stop lying.
I'm going to prolong it for as long as possible. But
lying.
At some point I'm going to say, okay, listen, I'm 65 years old. I'm not necessarily looking to build another 20 pounds.
Stop lying. I can't wait to be doing this podcast 30 years from now. We're still like, yeah, man, look, we missed it this whole time. We just had to train this way.
Yeah. But so at a certain point, I'm going to shift my goals, at least to a small degree, right? Like, let's just say the only difference is I'm not going to focus on building more muscle. I'm going to maintain muscle, but I also want to improve my health and my quality of life, let's say. A lot of the stuff I took from bodybuilding, I'm going to apply to that area. As far as what's healthy for me, a lot of it has come from focusing on bodybuilding related nutrition, but there's certain things from it that I can apply to health that, like, if I were to just say my goal is health, and I told them this is the method I'm going about it, like I'm eating these high protein diets, I'm eating these food sources, this, that, and the other thing, the health community is just say, no, that's not really the way to do it. But you know what? If I got healthy doing that, bodybuilding has made me much more healthy than obviously not doing bodybuilding. If I wasn't doing bodybuilding,
of course,
I would just be, my old ways, like when I was a kid, I just ate junk food, typical stuff people do. That's what I would be doing. It's obviously not healthy. My method of building more muscle has improved my health, it's improved my quality of life. If that was my main goal, I would take a lot of those factors. Sure, I'd probably change a few things, but my method going into it would be different, and that's because that approach works for me. And the reason it works for me is I enjoy the lifestyle. I eat the type of foods that I enjoy eating that makes it more sustainable for me. And, that's one of the main things that you need to focus on when you're talking about what's optimal. So if I said my goal is health, but now I have to go on a vegan diet, I'd probably never follow it. I wouldn't get the benefits from it. And, I wouldn't be able to stick to it, so I never would get healthier because of it. But if I say, listen, I stick to this type of diet, I can alter it and tweak it a little bit, that's going to help me, sustain it. That's going to make it more manageable for me.
When it comes to nutrition, I'm going to sit here and say that there's no... It's not that it's like there's no optimal diet, right? But once you understand the principles of nutrition, then you have to find what works for you
Correct.
with the foods.
Correct.
So I would say you need to find the optimal foods that work for you versus the type of diet. Because once you understand the principles of nutrition, let's say me and you went to the bagel store down the block and we got bagels. It's not like our body's going to say, oh my God, they're eating bagels. That's it. Put in the love handles. It doesn't work like that. We know this. Your body sees protein, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals. But until you understand that concept, you're going to be spinning your wheels. Because like you said, you can go from a vegan diet to now you're doing carnivore and you're changing too many variables. But in reality, you should learn how nutrition works. Track your protein, track your carbs, track your fats, track your calories. Do that. And then say, okay, what foods agree with me? What foods are optimal for me? Because I know, for me, peanut butter doesn't, I don't feel good when I eat peanut butter, but I can have almond butter. I feel great when I have almond butter. Same thing, we talked about this last time. When I have sweet potatoes, I feel bloated when I have sweet potatoes. But I can have bread and be fine.
Right.
Whereas somebody else could be the total opposite.
Right.
So I think when it comes to the nutrition aspect, it's more about what foods are optimal to you as opposed to what diet and framework work for you.
Right. And then once you figure that out, you can apply that to any of those diet frameworks, provided that you're not following a type of diet that's completely, it's like an elimination diet. Like obviously you're not going to be bringing carbs to a ketogenic diet, but if you just say, okay, these are the protein sources and the fat sources that I do enjoy, and then you go apply that to a keto diet, you're going to get better results than just sticking to a standard keto diet that somebody
like carnivore and apples.
Yeah. Again, that's your diet. That's just what it is. Not yours, but I'm saying if you eat carnivore and apples, that's your diet. But again, to call it a framework and say, I eat the carnivore plus apple diet, what if somebody just doesn't do well with apples? I actually get slight indigestion from apples. It's
really?
It's not. I love apples actually. It's one of my favorite fruits. But if I eat them consistently, I think it's probably the skin. But if I eat them consistently, I get indigestion easy from certain foods. Apples are one of them. If I eat them, if my only source of carbs was apples, I'd have to stop that diet just because my body wouldn't process it.
What about apple pie diet?
I'd probably be okay with the apple pie diet. But it's like the same thing. We use this example. I talked about it last time. Brown rice does not agree with me. No matter how healthy I try to be, eating brown rice is not going to help, because if I'm constantly walking around with indigestion, how healthy is that for your body?
Yeah, not at all.
And if I was to be following a clean diet everywhere I went, I only got brown rice, it wouldn't work for me. And like I said, I even go to some places that are healthy and I can't even get white rice. But white rice would be the healthier choice for me because my body can actually digest it.
Right. So I guess when we're saying that the fitness industry is lying to you, it's because they're trying to push an agenda on you.
Yeah,
some fitness magazines, all these websites online, even some of these gurus on YouTube. They're trying to push their agenda and their method toward you. And a lot of it's marketing. People don't understand marketing and branding, but a lot of it is marketing and branding. Certain guys follow certain things. They're known as you hear carnivore, you think of that other person.
Right.
You hear keto, you think of somebody who does keto. Instantly when I say keto, I can think of one fitness influencer who, goes keto. When you hear intermittent fasting, who's the first guy you think of?
Keno body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's branding. Right?
Yeah,
that person's building out that persona for that.
Yeah.
So you have to remember that when you follow somebody, you think Greg Doucette, what do you think? You hear main gaining.
Right.
It's branding.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's branding. So don't be fooled. The fitness industry is lying to you guys, because what's optimal for you, you have to find that out. And you have to experiment and test. And that's the only way, because maybe intermittent fasting does work for you.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's also a great example to show that what somebody else is doing that's optimal for them doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it. And a lot of people get caught up in that, and a lot of guys are guilty of promoting that too, as this is the best way to do it because it worked for me. It's not going to be the best approach for everybody. And a lot of people, we didn't even touch on this, but there's a whole other can of worms we could open up if we go into the supplement industry, and we go down the rabbit hole talking about how supplement are guilty of this too. We're talking about optimality and trying to do everything the best way possible. You start going into that, you'll read articles online where if you're training, you need to take this supplement, you need to time it at this time, and the only way you can get the best results training is if you train, 3 times a day, and the only way you can train 3 times a day is if you take this supplement. See how it just trickles down to, now I need the supplement or else none of this works, And they're probably the most guilty of it. And I think people are a little bit more understanding of, okay, there's a lot of gimmicks in the supplement industry and they understand it, but it applies to everything. You're talking about supplements, nutrition, training, everything. there's not one way to do it. There's the best way to do it for you.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm going to close it off on that. I think that that's ideal. So, guys, don't believe everything you hear, and that's why we are the no BS. We cut through all that fluff for you guys. So, whatever everyone's telling you, they're lying. Unless it works for you. Then, I guess in that case, they're not lying to you because it works for you. But majority of the time, it's not going to work for you. So, Pete and Anthony, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out. I forgot to shoot the video, the website.
Do you want to put it in?
Yeah, let me do the ending again.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm going to cap it off like that, man. That's how we're going to end it. Perfect. Alright, guys. Pete and Anthony, New York Muscle Radio, GetStrongNow.com,
OldSchoolMassGame.com,
and we're out. Alright, now we can talk shit.